Welcome to Youth Innocence Matters, an initiative dedicated to shining light on the issue of racial disparities in youth incarceration rates across America. In the United States, we hold dear the ideals of justice and equality for all. Yet, within our juvenile justice system, a harsh reality persists: racial disparities in youth incarceration. Despite making up only 15% of the population, Black youth are incarcerated at significantly higher rates than their white counterparts, emphasizing an urgent need for reform. While acknowledging the efforts and advancements made by restorative justice programs and legislation, we must also confront the ongoing challenges. The Sentencing Project, a prominent organization in the field of restorative justice, reports that racial disparities persist within the juvenile justice system, despite a 75% decline in overall youth incarceration rates. The latest data is from 2021, and it shows that Black youth are 4.7 times more likely to be placed in juvenile facilities than their white counterparts. This is the data. This disturbing data makes it clear that simply reducing overall incarceration rates is not enough. We must actively target these racial disparities through the combined approach of restorative justice programs and policy reforms to specifically target pre-arrest diversion programs, ending the school-to-prison pipeline, the implementation of juvenile record expungement laws, and racial impact statements, in order to offer the youth of this country and the families and communities affected by this issue the most promising path forward. Imagine a system that intervenes before a young person's life is forever altered by the stigma of a criminal record. Pre-arrest diversion programs offer this very possibility. Pre-arrest diversion is a lifeline for young people trapped in a system that judges them before understanding them. By intervening early, we can prevent unnecessary criminal records and interactions with the justice system, reducing the effects of systemic biases that contribute so heavily to racial disparities in youth incarceration in this country. This can be done through the powerful approach of pre-arrest diversion programs, which would provide opportunities for understanding, growth, and redemption, and acknowledge that young people of all colors and backgrounds are more than their worst moment. Across the country, states are recognizing the power of pre-arrest diversion and are taking action to make their systems more equitable. If every state were to implement changes like these, we are confident it would lead to a significant impact. By analyzing diversion data by race and ethnicity, advocates and local justice system leaders can pinpoint areas with the most significant disparities and develop new approaches to address them. Several jurisdictions, including Pennsylvania, New York, California, Kentucky, and Iowa, have already made progress over the years in reducing diversion disparities by working towards data-driven reforms. Changing practices that go against research on what works best and unfairly push youth of color out of the system is one step toward reducing disparities. For example, revising policies to allow more young people, beyond just those involved in low-level offenses, to be eligible for diversion programs, and giving them multiple chances at diversion can really help make sure that youth of color aren't disproportionately excluded or worse, pulled further into the justice system. This could also include improving outreach to increase the likelihood that youth offered the opportunity of diversion actually participate. Many jurisdictions have seen a significant number of eligible youth, particularly youth of color, not entering diversion due to a lack of outreach. Kentucky, however, and for example, was able to improve its procedures for informing youth diversion opportunities, leading to a significant increase in participation, especially for Black youth. If states continue in this way, we could see promising results in reducing the racial disparities in youth incarceration rates that ruin so many young lives. Also, when we make kids and their families pay fines and fees to get into diversion programs, we're basically shutting the door on a lot of young people of color. It's not fair, it's not helping anyone. The good news is more and more states are waking up to this problem, and some are eliminating these fees altogether, while others are putting a cap on how much they can charge. It's a step in the right direction, for sure, and some states are also even setting up victim compensation funds or looking at how much a family can actually afford to pay before setting a price. It's really all about making sure these programs are available to everyone who needs them, not just those who can afford to pay. That's completely unfair, and we know who that affects. Furthermore, making youth admit guilt just to get into diversion programs can actually make things worse, especially for young people of color. These youth and their families often don't trust the justice system already, and for good reason. They're usually more hesitant to say, "I'm guilty," because of this. So instead of demanding a formal guilty plea, What if we ask kids to take responsibility for their actions? This could help ease some of those trust issues and open the door for more young people to benefit from these programs, while also teaching them about themselves and how their actions do affect others and have consequences. We don't want to scare them away, we want to help them. Finally, pushing youth into the justice system when they make mistakes during diversion programs often backfires, especially for young people of color who tend to face harsher outcomes already. Instead of rushing to file charges and prosecute, it's smarter that we find ways to help these young people succeed in their diversion programs, which could range from offering more hands-on support, through better case management, or bringing together teams of experts from different fields to step in when a child is struggling. By focusing on support rather than punishment, we can help more children successfully complete these programs and stay out of the court system, changing lives. Pennsylvania is one example of great progress being made. Several counties have joined a program focusing on pre-arrest and pre-court diversion, which has led to the adaptation of existing programs to better serve youth of color and the creation of new school-based diversion programs. As a result, more Black youth and other youth of color are getting access to diversion opportunities. These examples just go to show a nationwide commitment to reducing racial disparities in youth incarceration through pre-arrest diversion. The overall shared goal is to expand this everywhere to create a more fair, more effective system that offers all young people a genuine chance at rehabilitation and a brighter future they deserve, just like anyone else. For more details on the impact of diversion programs and to learn how you can contribute, visit the Sentencing Project's website. It's very informative. Another important solution that we'd like to suggest and that we must work towards is dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline. For far too many young people, particularly Black youth, the journey toward incarceration begins not on the streets, but in the hallways of their schools. This phenomenon funnels youth, particularly students of color, out of public schools and into the criminal justice system through harsh disciplinary policies, the increased presence of law enforcement in schools, and the overdone criminalization of minor misdemeanors. In 2017 through 2018, Black students made up 28.7% of students referred to law enforcement and 31.6% of students arrested at school, despite making up only 15.1% of total student enrollment. This means Black students are twice as likely to be arrested at school compared to their enrollment, a sad and terrifying reality for anyone. Overall, the United States has created a system that perpetuates racial disparities in youth incarceration rates, where students of color are disproportionately punished, criminalized, and pushed away from support and opportunities and straight into the criminal justice system. This cycle of punishment and exclusion limits their future opportunities for success and significantly increases their likelihood of involvement within the criminal justice system. This pipeline needs to end through the shared efforts of restorative justice programs, legislation, and you in order to see real improvements. Several organizations are actively working to dismantle this system and promote humane disciplinary practices in schools. For example, the American Civil Liberties Union is fighting against this pipeline by using strategic litigation and advocacy campaigns to ensure that all students have access to quality education and by challenging policies that criminalize students. The ACLU is also working to address racial disparities in school discipline by demonstrating how students of color and students with disabilities are twice as likely as other students to be referred to police and arrested in schools. Additionally, they're trying to get the Counseling Not Criminalization Schools Act passed, which would provide students with more support instead of punishment. Through these actions, the ACLU is working to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline, and hopefully other organizations can get involved in acts like these. The Sentencing Project is another leading juvenile justice advocacy organization that's working towards this. They provide resources like the Back to School Action Guide, which offers promising practices for reducing school arrests and suspensions, accessible to anyone on the internet. Check it out to get involved. And finally, the Intercultural Development Research Association is also working to end this pipeline in a similar way as the ACLU, ensuring that all youth have access to an equitable, high-quality education by advocating for policies that support students' emotional well-being. They are urging Congress to end the criminalization of students by eliminating federal funding for law enforcement in schools. They instead recommend that these funds go towards practices that actually create positive school environments. Some of their main policy recommendations including the complete removal of invasive monitoring systems and the presence of police, required student mental health professionals ratios in schools, and disciplinary policies that keep students in schools instead of juvenile justice facilities or other disciplinary placements. And finally, Today, it's easier than ever for people to access juvenile records. Law enforcement, employers, schools, and the general public can often see the offenses a child has committed. Imagine applying for a job and someone can see mistakes you made when you were younger. That doesn't seem fair considering how different we are as children than as adults, developmentally. These records can have serious consequences for young people, making it hard for them to find a place to live, get a job, or go to college. Research shows that up to 62.5% of young people with records are discouraged from applying to college, and up to 20% are even automatically denied admission because of the record disclosure requirement. It's even harder for those who aren't going to college, as many employers simply won't hire someone with a record, even for minor offenses. This means that a mistake made as a child can follow someone for their entire life, limiting their opportunities. These records can then be used to justify continued discrimination against them, making it even harder for Black to succeed throughout their entire lives. Sealing these records is so important, something we so desperately need to push towards, because it would give youth a fair chance to move forward with their lives without the burden of past mistakes. It would also help protect their privacy and prevent further discrimination against them based on their history. It's about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, and young people deserve the opportunity to learn and grow without being held back by their past. So, by sealing these records, we're not condoning bad behavior. We're simply saying that young people deserve a second chance, and we're investing in their futures. Racial impact statements have proven powerful at addressing systemic racial disparities in the justice system because these statements require policymakers to evaluate how proposed legislation might affect different racial groups before they're enacted. This way, politicians can make smarter choices and avoid accidentally hurting minority communities. These are the efforts that we, Youth Innocence Matters, thinks will work best in diverting youth from unfair criminalization. We believe these solutions offer the best outcomes in dismantling the systemic racism that has surrounded the juvenile justice system for far too long. However, with this current political climate in the U.S., we really have to consider the barriers we are predicted to face in terms of progress surrounding this issue. With that being said, it is important to address that the upcoming presidency may have a detrimental impact on the issue of racial disparities in juvenile overall incarceration rates. Based on Trump's previous policy stances and rhetoric around criminal justice, we are concerned that this issue may worsen under his administration through tougher policies that disregard or purposely target marginalized communities of people, reducing efforts towards the issue that have already been made, and shifting funding towards more important issues. Also, there will probably be an increase in conservative judges and perhaps less emphasis on data collection and reporting in regards to civil rights issues, especially, something that should be brought to light. This is why it is so important for us to continue to emphasize the importance of restorative justice groups and getting organized in general in order to enact change. By advocating for these solutions we mentioned in this video, taking time to educate ourselves, using reliable resources, and raising awareness about the injustices faced by Black and brown youth in the justice system, we can create a brighter future for all, because the children in this country deserve a system that supports and uplifts them, not one that criminalizes and alienates them. We can also create a more empathetic and compassionate society altogether that is eager to achieve justice for all. Please join us in the fight for a more just and equitable juvenile justice system where everyone's voice is heard and everyone deserves a second chance. Thank you.